Okay, good evening again, everyone, and welcome to another session with Dr. Voon. Today, we're going to have another talk by Dr. Voon, and this time it's going to be about Greater Bau, nationalist past and present. And before we start, we'd just like to welcome every one of you who are present here. Can you just identify yourself so that we will know who you are? We have Dr. Voon there, I can see. We have Nick there. The rest, I'm not very sure. Can you switch on your mic, sorry, your video, so we can know who you are? Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here, Elena. Thank you.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you, Dr. Voon. Yeah, Dr. John. Yeah.
There's another guy or lady, Galaxy J4. If I'm not mistaken, is one of those who asked questions. Sorry, Nick?
I think it's
Dr. Lam. Okay, welcome, Dr. Lam. I can't see you. Good for you, Nick. You remember. Your memory is better than mine. Okay, welcome everyone. And since there are only 5 of us, so we expect to see more guests coming in. If not, later on we'll just have the recorded one and send it out to everyone so we can all share and learn from Dr. Voon here. Okay, over to you, Dr. Voon.
All right. Thank you. Welcome to this wonderful talk. I'm Dr. Voon Cham, and I'm most delighted to speak about Bau again. This particular talk will concentrate on Bau nationalism. Okay. Well, Greater Bau is birth from 20, and by 2030, we can see the fruit of Greater Bau. So this is the talk that the 4th talk actually in the series. I entitled it as Bau nationalism, specifically about the Bau nationalism movement historically, as well as the nationalist concern. It is not comprehensive, but it's good enough for us to understand the full nature and of the Bau nationalism. All right. So the first thing we need to understand, truly Bau is a fertile land, fertile ground for nationalistic movement. There were especially 3 major races, and each of them flourishes with their own nationalism. Okay, namely the Malay nationalism, and then the Melayu nationalism, followed by Chinese nationalism. At that order, right? Now, this is the first book that I've written about Bau, is on the histories of Bau gold mining settlement. So this is since 1820. So the Chinese was there. So there is some record of the early fervent nationalistic movement by the Chinese settlers. All right, but at the same time we have the Malay nationalism around about that time as well. Now, just also to recap, Bau is situated in the Borneo Island, which is very unusual, the 3rd largest island in the world. And with this physical, you can see physical mountains in between dividing the Sarawak from the West Kalimantan, and also Kalimantan in the whole island. So if you look at the tip western part of Sarawak, yeah, that is where Bau is. On the top is South China Sea, and down there is a vast land of West Kalimantan, comprising Sambas and Pontianak, etc. Okay, so a lot of Bidayus come from Sambas and move towards Bau in Sarawak. So this is now we focus on Bau itself. So Bau is a pearl and diamond, green diamonds with sparkles everywhere. You can see those sparkles illustrated by the the roads, the settlements, etc. In the middle there, you can see actually the mountain, the mountain of Mount Klian, the iconic mountain. This is a bigger picture of Bau. On the east side is the Sarawak, Kuching, the capital. So you can see that Bau on the left. They are very near Kuching, Sarawak. And you can see in the middle there is this Matang range. Okay, underneath the Matang range, you can see another mountain that is actually Mount Singai. Yeah. Okay. Now they can see now the whole thing about Bau. Yeah, the road system connecting and the river concern. Again, beyond this picture is South China Sea, coastal areas, and so Bau actually is inner land, right? Inner land, and then it is full of settlements. At least seven settlements of significance. All right, so this is another one. Just recap what we are talking about is Bau. Yeah, so there is a lot of development, and the diamond is getting better, but more and more prominent, pricier and pricier, I suppose. So this is where the greater Bau will be. Yeah? The greater Bau will be in 2030. This thing can help us to imagine the priceless place Bau in the history of Sarawak as well as Borneo. Right, sparkling with green background. This is exactly what Bau is, for greeneries, and also at the same time, for vitalities of life, sparkles with vitality of lives. All right, so we can actually imagine that. So now we go into, after the introduction, go to first in nationalism in Bau. You can trace back actually there is this Malay nationalism. Okay, now as I said just now, Bau actually is near Kuching, especially on Batu Kitang side. All right, and then these are Malay land, actually by the river. So they were there. Malay was there. They are closely connected with Sambas, but also from this picture we can also know that the Malay also connected with the Brunei. Okay, like Sultan Tengah in the 15th century went to Sambas and to and fro. So the Malays from Sambas are closely associated with Bau Malays. So actually they were already very nationalistic. This is Muda Hashim. This is the era of the Brunei Sultanate. So he is a sort of governor of Sarawak. But then there was a civil war or civil conflict, strife in Sarawak, the old Sarawak here, in near Kuching. So Muda Hashim was one of the Brunei representative here, governor here. So they come along the first Malay nationalist, Datuk Patinggi Ali. Yeah? Datuk Patinggi Ali. This is a great man who actually fought against Muda Hashim. Okay, and then they actually also fought against Brunei, so it is that in that context he fought against Brunei. He is one of the pioneers in mining antimony, but then Datuk Patinggi was not happy with the taxation, etc. So they fought against it, against the Brunei intervention and Brunei rule. So that's where you can see quite a number of rebellion or freedom fighting among the Malays, and it's led chiefly by Datuk Patinggi. So this was our first Malay nationalist, which is at the edge of Bau, edge of the Bau district, which is near Batu Kitang, or more specifically as Lida Tana. Lida Tana is very strategic place. It was the capital of old Sarawak, at that time, and because of that strategic place, they built their empire there. This was at Senior 1, and the place is now populated with Malay kampongs, Malay friends, and also Buso. There is going to be a heritage town in Buso, which is further up a little bit. Yeah, this is Senior 1 side. and there's this compound Malay villages. So the Malay presence is very much alive there. Yeah, this is our the Lida Tanah. This is a strange place where actually one branch go to Bau, the other branch go to Puncak Borneo. The right hand side go to Bau, okay, and then the between there is this Lida Tanah where the fortress, some battles were fought there, and this now linked by bridge, Batu Kitang Bridge, yeah, and now the Malay is still striving there, right? Now, second one is the Bidayu nationalism in Bau. As we know, Bidayu forms a majority, if not almost more than 90% of Bidayu villages. And so Bidayu nationalism has its roots there as well in this part of the world, in Bau in particular. And we are going to examine a few. Okay, these are earlier part of the Bau Matang side or Kuching side. When you go towards the interior to Bau, okay, beyond that mountain, then you can see that this is what it was in the early 19th century. There were just houses left and right, and in Kuching a lot of Malays. Beyond that is Bidayu already. So this is warrior time. The most important thing is defense, self-defense, and not just against our own enemies, but also external enemies. There were raids, marauders attacking different tribes there, Bidayu tribes there. That's where you can see the origins of Bau nationalism or Bau Bidayu nationalism. One of the aspects of Bidayu nationalism in Bau actually it is a dialect. You can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 or 5 sub-dialects of Bidayu. Okay, so in Bau there is another sub-dialect called Jagoy Singai sub-dialect of Bidayu. So this is also one of the language nationalism. If you can look at it more detail, yeah. Right, but then we can now go back to Bau nationalists. Number one, famously called Panglima Kulo. Okay, he was from Brata. All right, so he was one of the earliest. He fought against what they call marauders, the outsiders. So he tried to defend his place, although he didn't manage to successfully defend. But there are evidence of his efforts in trying to defend Batak tribe at that time. So he is one of the earliest nationalists that's called Pangliman Kulau. People remember him now and built a place for a memoriam for him and a place to recall history. So you can see that nationalism in Bau among the Bidayus is already since the 1980s already established. And we will just want to note there are actually a few more nationalists. Perhaps there are more pioneers called pioneers. Yeah, for example, Kaga and Kado, for example. Yeah, they are not the real pictures, but anyway, you can see the Bidayu warriors, Bidayu fighters, Bidayu Panglimans are similar, right? The costumes, the spirit of it. Kaga and Kado and some others are important nationalists, which are not written yet in the histories about Bidayu. All right, then in Serembu, there's a big mountain called Mount Serembu, and there was this another Panglima Mita. Panglima Mita is one also against the British, James Brooke in particular. Also, he succeeded in defending Bau in that sense, and was reinstated as the Orang Kaya, they call it. But this another guy called Parimban. This is a paramount chief of Singai. This Parimban is so far is well known among the Singai Bidayu, but unknown to the rest of the world. Parimban is the one who fought against James Brooke and successfully done so and was martyred at that time. So there are a lot of Bau Bidayu nationalists. Now we go to Chinese nationalists in Bau. Chinese come a bit later, as I noted, since 1820s. So it's just behind Malay and Bidayu nationalism. So Chinese nationalism came later when the settlers came in, those remnants of the Qin dynasties. They bring along their children, wives, and some of them married in local wives, and they become the pioneers of the gold mining in Bau since 1820s. So there were civil wars, as just now I show you in West Kalimantan. So some of them came to Bau to escape the civil war as well as to explore new mining lands. Okay, you can see this is a map. Towards the west side is the vast land of West Kalimantan, where they actually, one big group go to Bau, the other big group go to Inkilili. Both of them started Gongsis. In other words, it's a Chinese republic. All right. Now this is the guy Lo Fang Pe. Lo Fang Pe actually was from this Pontianak region of West Kalimantan. He was the first nationalist republic, first republic nationalist from China, established his name in West Kalimantan. So his influence drew a lot of Chinese pioneers and to Bau as well. So in Bau, since the 1980s, we have a plan to build statue to remember. For example, here is Liu Zhanbang and Wang Jia, two Chinese nationalists around about 1830s, 40s, 50s, 1850s in particular. So these are two that Chinese venerated, just as we venerated the Bidayu, Mita, Rimban, Kulo, and Malay, Batok, Patinggi. All right. So this Liu Zhanbang was the pioneer. Then he started this kind of Gongsi called Gongsi 12, Gongsi 12. Yeah? So the Gongsi 12 is a republic because they elected the 12 and they become shareholders to the mining gold company there. And this is not exclusive. Other places in Indonesia also have this Gongsi, and China as well. So this is another place which I would like to highlight, because there is this guy just now I mentioned about Wang Jia. Wang Jia actually is from Bau, Gongsi, and he actually was martyred or killed here in 1857 at the mountain behind, where he built a fortress, a barricade against the James Brooke, Charles Brooke. So he was there, buried there as a nationalist Chinese Wang Jia. And of course, this statue was built and drawn by people from Museum Sarawak. This is Liu Zhanbang. This is already understood to be a nationalist, but to me he was more like a pioneer. And then he built up Bau, as a pioneer, as a father of Bau. You can modern Bau, you can say that about town. Okay. Of course, later on you have the famous Li Kui Chun of Bau Town and a few others. This was under Charles Blue. These are the people who are more on business, and they were actually builder of Bau also. Yeah. So in terms of Chinese nationalism, it's not just civil war, civil strife, or against colonialism or against foreign rule, but it's also business and also building up transformation of the Bau Town itself. This is our historian, also Liu Pekhui. I like to remember him as such because he was the first one who made study on Bau and Chinese nationalism, especially Liu Zhanbang and Wang Jia. And he went to China and he studied and he wrote book. He was a history teacher at Chunghwa #1, the late Liu Pekhui. Now these are some of the still can be seen in some of the temples, the evidence of which show that it is a place where you have seen national Chinese culture there, Chinese character, Chinese calligraphy, and all the idols put there are all these, some of them are related including maybe they even, venerated Liu Shanbang and others. These are some of the another places whereby actually Chinese has a tradition of remembering their forefathers, especially the warriors and also the pioneers. And this is the evidence, and to the extent of idolizing, worshipping them. So this is Chinese nationalism, which is evident everywhere in Bawu towns. Okay, now this town Bawu, as we can recap, is because of gold, number one, and the back there is Mount Krian, right? So you can see that Bawu actually, because of the Chinese pioneers, it becomes like that. But of course, the neighboring town like Grogol and other Batak town and some in from Klokong, their areas, they are the feeder communities, Bidayu community, which make Bawu today. All right. This is actually from Enkleli. There is still this Kongsi Hao still standing. But in Bawu, the Kongsi Hao already disappeared. So this is just give an idea how was it the Kongsi Hao, where they meet together and decide like company, shape like modern company as a republic, so choose their leaders and they plan their attacks and counter attacks as well. This is the flagpole evidence made from Berlin or ironwood, and it is still around evidence, and this thing is preserved for the Chinese to prove the Chinese community, Chinese nationalism is there. Yeah? And of course, they have this flag, even a coin, coinage as well, and they, of course the pots and everywhere. This is another one from another angle. So these are all preserved in Bawu. Yeah, just like the the Bidayu, they do have pots and so on. They do have some evidence, and including the skulls, the trophies. Those are clear evidence of their nationalistic movements. Okay, of course, apart from languages, we have Chinese school, Chinese temples, Chinese education, which are prominently featured in Bao's Chinese community. This is where actually Liu Shanbang was buried, allegedly. Okay, but then they really know this place. They agree that this is the place where they were. Liu Shanbang was buried. Now Liu Shanbang, to the extent of being sent back to China to be buried there. So the nationalistic feelings among the Chinese is still thick. These are some of the Chinese idols where they worship. And again, some are related to the nationalists. Nationalists. I think we just like we put up memorial plaque for Limba, Mita, Kulo. Chinese used to do do that, venerated through temples. Okay, and then San Yi Tang, for example, this is where the earlier pioneers, they were killed. Some of them died of old age, and they were considered as contributors to Bao nationalism among the Chinese community. So today they're still intact, just like the the skulls in the kampong there, whereby you can see those are nationalistic evidence for the Bidayu. All right, this is when 1857 when Chinese attacked the Kuching, and it was led by Wang Jia, not Liu Shanbang. So there is no evidence of Liu Shanbang going down. But at this point, they attacked Kuching, and Wang Jia became Raja for 3 days. So this is a famous, some call it insurrection for Chinese or for us. Occidental point of view, they are freedom fighters for us. All right. So now we can see some of the things left over, in Bawu there. Some of them Chinese kept it, but it's mostly in private hands. Hopefully we can recover that by the museum. And then of course some of it similar items are in the Bidayu houses, like big pots, dragon pots, all that. A symbol of status, symbol of this multiculturalism, right? So later on we should go to Bao nationalism, whereby you can see these are the things they exchange things, they exchange even the warrior spirit. They really live together like brothers and sisters in the nationalist movement, in the early nationalist movement of Bao, and today the same. This is another relic which shows that there is a Chinese influence there. All right, even right across to the river mouth to Santubong, and also in Kuching, you can find all this as well. So this one is also purchased by the Bidayus, and being exchange, barter trade number Bidayus, and kept by the Chinese in Badiu houses everywhere. Okay, you can see even the Chinese character within the pot. Bao has this kind of evidence which shows the Chinese nationalism was very rich here. Was very rich, not just because of gold, but other things as well. You see? They actually came for a piece of land, I suppose, and then they want to settle down. And then they will love Bayou, they will stay in Bayou, they have their offsprings in Bayou, and they grow up the Bayou. So the fourthly, we look at Bao national up. We study the Malay, the Bidayu, and the Chinese, and combine the three main races. I form this conceptualize this Bao nationalism. All right. Now Bao nationalism possibly can be said to begin with James Wood coming. This is royalist. James Wood came in 1841 or before that, 1839. He started a modernized Kuching, and of course, one of the area is controlled by Kuching is Bau. All right, so Bau we call Upper Sarawak. Upper Sarawak. So this is where it is, Upper Sarawak, whereby there is a lot of full of intrigues, full of things for adventurers, flora and fauna, all the geological as well as archaeological exploits that we can make, hills and trees and mountains and streams, all these forms of part of wonders of Bau, which is captivated all the adventurers from Kuching, Sarawak. Okay, all right. Bau nationalism can be encapsulated in this memorial. This big is found in museum ground. It was formerly at somewhere else. So actually, they have pictures of Kulo, Liu Sambang, but they don't have the picture of Pak Rimban because he was not lifted as such. Mita as well, or even Kadika and Kado, which I have mentioned. There are many actually Bidayu nationalists from each village or each settlement. There were nationalists, and these are the people who should inspire the young generations to become even more loving towards his land. All right, so this is another picture of Bau nationalists, whereby you can see now with the local leaders, and outside investors, and the local cultures, businessmen, miners, all these multiracial Chinese, Malays, and most important of all, the Bidayus are all there, kept in one society, one community of Bau under Kuching and by extension under Sarawak, Borneo. This is another picture. You can see Chinese, different costume coming together at festivals, and this is real the product of Bau nationalism, where Chinese and also the Malays coming together with Bau. Yeah, but let us conclude. Yeah, nationalist or nationalist movement, nationalism is real. As I said, Bau was and is still a fertile land, very fertile land for nationalistic feelings of Sarawak people. It is like a microcosm of multiculturalism in this part of the world, where they live together, grow together. All right, they were started off with gold. Gold is everywhere and still is, and although it's not properly excavated or mined, but nevertheless it is understood as a symbol of where we can this draws and enrich the whole nationalistic movement. Okay, and way back in 2017, we talked about this already, and we talk about Bao freedom fighting, 1857, and perhaps there will be more seminar going on for the Bao, 18 maybe 41, for example, whereby Pak Riban was killed, and Mita a bit later, and there's a lot to be done among the Bidayus, and also Patinggi Ali, which I hardly see any seminar or understanding. So these seminars will inspire the young people and will help us to remember our forefathers, their contributions, the pioneers, their contributions. This is all about nationalism, yeah, and the imagined community which became alive among us. So these are the people with the minister who are concerned with culture and nationalism. Now, one of the trees of Bau, which is can be seen as a symbol of nationalism, is the tapang tree. This is tapang tree, tall and rise above the canopy. Okay, you can see many nationalists, many tapang trees among in the Bidayu villages still is, and along the roadside. When you see the tapang trees, you can remember this Bidayu nationalists and other Bidayu nationalists in Pau. Again, we go back to this museum ground. You can see one day a picture of others may be also put up there, like Pulau Bita Rimban and Patingga and others, which we historian would be interested to find out more about them. So Greater Bau in 2030 will have its basis on Bau nationalism. All right. Again, Greater Bau 2030 will have to be on the foundation of Bau nationalism, the past nationalist and the present nationalist. Right. Bau is a place that is like a green diamond and getting more polished, and one day you will become truly a marvel for us all. Thank you very much for your listening and participation. I'm looking forward to do more if there is more research done by me. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Voon. And thank you everyone for being here again. Once again, I think we have some new company. We have Professor Datuk Dr. Danny Wong from MU. And I think it's your turn now, Dr. Wong. Dr. Danny, your turn to do the commentary. So we'd like to welcome you now to do our commentary for this talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. I wonder if you can hear me well?
Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I will be very brief because I think this is a very interesting topic. Whenever we talk about nationalism, there will be some discourse about what constitutes nationalism. And in my previous work, and even currently, I'm dealing with the notion of nationalism, the concept of nationalism, especially with my students. So when Dr. Woon was talking about nationalism, the development of this idea that Bao nationalism, the local nationalism, and so on, I would like to suggest that we want to look at this from perhaps two different angles. And maybe with this idea of looking at it from slightly different perspective, we may be able to come up with something a bit more clearer as to what we meant by this idea of nationalism. One is the fact that the concept itself would demand some justification, but let's not touch on that first. Maybe I will touch on that later. But it's more important for us to look at the idea of nationalism. Let's say if we were to go back to the 200 years of Bao being in existence, but of course, when we look back to time, the Bidayu people and other people who were already in Bao area would have certain sense of belonging of who they were at the time and to what tribe do they belong to which community they belong to, and so on. So this kind of idea, let's say if they were to belong to the Bidayu tribes in Singai, and in Singai itself, you may have maybe smaller groups and so on. But the idea of Singai maybe would have been able to put them together, to pull them together and say that we may be different from those, although they are Bidayu people, they may be belong to another group that are down in another part of, let's say, somewhere in Syrian, for instance, or in Lundu, for instance. Then the idea of we against others would be something that we should actually look into, because this is where the sense of idea of being conscious of belonging to one community would be very crucial. And it is based on such understanding that this idea of I belong to this community in Singai, I'm a Bidayu, but when I meet another group from Lundu, for instance, then I would say that hey, they are also Bidayu, they speak almost similar tongues, but then who are they? Oh, they came from Lundu. Are they of the same people? So the idea of different communities coming together, having shared commonalities, a lot of idea that they share together, a lot of culture, and also, of course, most importantly, linguistic, and their sense of the pantheon, the type of gods that they were looking into would be something that we should pay attention to, because these are the forces that eventually brought them together. These are the forces that eventually brought these different groups of people from Singai, from Lundu, from Syrian, the people that is known as Bidayu, for instance. So you have a consciousness about Bidayu being Bidayu. First, it was the chiefs, it was the tribes, and then the people of community of Bidayu, and then later on when they met other people, let's say the Malay, the Ibans, for instance, or later the Chinese, or those who came over from the Dutch Borneo and so on. All this would set them to say this, we against them, or we belong to this group of community, whereas they belong to another community. And it was such consciousness, such sense of belonging that eventually gave rise to this idea that we are together, and therefore we should take care of ourselves. The chieftains that Dr. Woon alluded to would be those people that we look back to and say, what have they done, and in what way that they actually brought the people together, and to have a stronger sense of togetherness, or being to have a sense of we are part of this community and so on. Later on, when they start to deal with other people, and this is where the consciousness of being one people against others became very important. And this is where we began to see each would have their own sense of destiny, own sense of where they want to be, or what Dr. Woon was using this term, imagining communities. So what kind of community, what kind of future that they were actually imagining at that point of time. So this is the beginning that we should actually give meaning to it, look at it and say, look, it did not come out immediately as nationalism, but rather there was a step-by-step development, starting from community consciousness, later on to a larger body of people. And later on, when they talk about formation of Malaysia, that's where we began to see different groups of people coming together and say, well, we have this state that is called Sarawak, and therefore we want to have or to fight for this land that is called Sarawak. But then the consciousness about nationalism, if I may dwell on this further, is to talk about the concept that emerged after the war. Now we know that the idea of Sarawak coming together was a creation of the Orang Putih, the what they call the Raja Brooks, brought this entire entity together and then call it the Kingdom of Sarawak under the Brooks. But then the people were thinking something different, and they were thinking that we should actually have something not led by this Raja Brooke, but it will be something that we should own together. So this was where you can see after the war, after the Japanese war, we could see different group of people began to champion for different ideas about the notion of Sarawak and so on. So this is where the consciousness began to take on a nationalistic element or characteristic. And this is the one that opened up the door towards nationalism, the development of nationalism. Because development of nationalism would mean that they were looking into a nation state, the creation of a nation state, rather than a kingdom, or rather than, say, a tribe and so on, where the idea of nation does not exist. So this is where we need to actually pay a bit of this attention and make clear distinction between say patriotism or sense of community, sense of belonging that eventually develop into nationalism, especially after the Japanese War, the Second World War. And when the Brooks left, what was left in Sarawak was supposed to be the people of Sarawak. But then came the British Crown colonies, the colonial office that turned Sarawak together with North Borneo into the latest and the newest colonies directly ruled by the British. And this was where the people began to sense that they were not having their ways. And this was where you have Rusty Dobby and friends began to think of what else, what should we do, and so on. So this is where the idea of nation began to slowly take shape, because the notion of this new nation, of the new state of Sarawak, then later on as part of the nation of Malaysia, came from this realization that although we are, say, Bidayu from Bau, although we are people of, say, Chinese ethnicity or Malay or Iban or the Melanau and so on, we are now coming together to form this nation of Malaysia, but via the state of Sarawak. So this is where it is important for us to make such distinction. And of course, the notion of Malaysia allow us to have this sense of nationalism. So you can see that this sense of community into a sense of being one part, one people, one state, eventually one nation. So the idea of the development of nationalism would be good if we can actually give a bit more meat to it. The other thing, of course, is to come back to Bao. So can there be Bao nationalism? Maybe the term would be Bao sense of belonging, sense of pride, and being part of Bao, and Bao being 200 years of history. There's a sense of strong community of being a part of Bao, and I think this is where we should develop this idea. To say that Bao have nationalism, I think Bao's nationalism is part of the nationalism towards Malaysia, the nation of Malaysia, the nation state of Malaysia, where the state of Sarawak is part of it, where the people of Bao is part of this larger nation. But to the people of Bao, the sense of belonging, sense of pride to this land that they are familiar with, that they could share a lot of understanding, there are a lot of commonalities, common destinies and so on, would be the idea that we should actually nurture and develop. So I think this is something, very interesting topic, and I want to thank Dr. Voon for sharing with us his idea. And I think this idea can be developed further into something that we could actually make use of, even as we venture out to deal with the younger group of people from Bau or the present community, we would be able to actually look at it with a slightly different angle, perspectives, and build stronger, build onto what is already in existence, so that we can actually see how the community in Bau would be able to make sense of it, and also to have a stronger sense of belonging, stronger sense of pride to Bau as well as to Sarawak and also to the nation of Malaysia. So I think I better stop here. So thank you, Elena, and thank you, Dr. Woon.
Thank you, Dr. Danny Wong. Now we are going to have our moderator, Dr. John Francis. Are you ready to open the floor for question and answer session again?
Okay. Thank you, Elena.
Welcome.
Yeah, and first and foremost, I would like to congratulate Dr. Voon, yeah, for his very informative presentation, yeah, an explanation of his concept of nationalism in Bau, yeah, from 1820, yeah, and also I would like to thank Professor Datuk Danny Wong for his very clear, yeah, explanation, clarification with regard to what nationalism should be, yeah, in the case of Bau from 1820, because I myself wasn't really sure as to whether we are really referring to nationalism then, yeah, or was it just a very, you know, loose term, you know, to refer to some small group affiliation among the Bidayu subgroups, for example, Jagoy represented by Kulau, and then Pak Rimban represented by Singai represented by Pak Rimban, Jagoy represented by Panglima Kulau, and of course the Chinese community who had their own leaders at that time, Liu Shanbang and Wan Jia, and the Malays, they had their own leader, in this case Datuk Petinggi Ali, yeah. So I was very captivated by what rather how Professor Danny Wong puts it when we refer to what actually is nationalism in its pure sense. So I wish not to prolong my sharing here. Now I would like to invite some questions from the floor. If there are any questions, I noticed that there are only 6 of us, yeah, in this forum tonight. So I'm wondering where the others are. Yeah, I think we were expecting Dato' Henry himself to be here and his charges. They don't seem to be here. All right. So any questions from the others, members of the floor? You may, you know, post your question on the chat. Any question?
Dr. John?
Yes.
This is Dr. Voon here.
Yeah,
While
yeah.
waiting, can I make a bit of a response to the commentary?
Yes, sure, Dr. Voon.
Yeah, thank you.
Please
Just
do.
short one will do.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I really understand and agree with Professor Danny with regard to the definition of nationalism. Actually, it comes from the word when the concept of nation state was born. So then you have a modern definition of nationalism, right? But here, because this is in 1830s and 40s, I incline to look at it as the root word of nation. The nation comes from the word ethnos. Okay, it's a Greek word for nation. So in the Bible, for example, we can see God wants to bless Abraham, wants to bless the nation, and the word is used is ethnos. So in other words, ethnicism, or you can, I incline to use it as a nationalism, right? Rather than the modern sense where talking about nation state. Yeah, after the World War, I understand that the nation state is there. So the word nationalism has become redefined. Maybe you say nationism, but anyway, I see the Bau there. It is perhaps one of the oldest birthplace of what I term it as nationalism or ethnocism. Ethnos. So in other words, I see that the ethnic groups come together, and it came. There is a changes when these three major ethnic groups come together, especially the Malay and the Chinese, when they interacted with the majority of Bau people. Of course, Bau people also can come from Syrian, Hindu, and elsewhere, and even Dutch Borneo. But when they settle in Bau itself, they have their dialect. It's very distinctive from other groups. So that's where I said, I incline to say that Bau has its own nationalism. And the first is ethno. Secondly is their culture, their life is very unique. And because of these three interactions, these major races interacting, we can see that the Bidayu getting more and more, Bau Bidayu getting more and more nationalistic. Okay, so the evidence is such, Kado, Kaga, Kulo, Bita, of course, Pak Rimban and others. They are actually, coming out of their, it used to be their text. They were, ruled by others, ruled by the Brunei, ruled by the Malays, and even controlled to a certain extent by the Chinese. But now they come out and then become a strong nation, strong ethnic group, strong Bau Bidayu. But the unique thing is that as the Bidayu become more and more nationalized, I would call it, or becomes more prominent in their ethnicity, and they're educated, they are transformed, and then we can see that they actually preserve some aspect of multiculturalism. So that's where I can see that all the three races, major three races, when they come together, actually they are forming that Bau nationalism. I call that Bau. I incline to call that Bau nationalism. I wish there is a better word for this word, where Bau people, the three major races, of course, prominently is the Bidayu, Bau Bidayu itself. Then I call that Bau nationalism. So I understand there are this nationalism versus ethnoism. So these two is very hard to reconcile, but it's easy to see that the origin of ethnoism, actually, or nationalism, I kind of call it, is before Brooks come. After Brooks come, the modern state come in, nation state came in, then you can use the modern term of nationalism. That's what I can explain, and that's what I incline to think. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Voon. Yeah,
Okay.
for the clarification. Okay. We are inviting questions from members of the floor. As it is, there are only 7 of us, so if you have any questions to ask, to direct to the presenter, Dr. Voon, or even to Professor Datuk Danny Wong, please do so. Post your question onto the chat screen. Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Good evening, Dr. John.
Yes. Yes.
I just make a. My name is Lam Chi Kyong.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I just
All
make
right.
a short observation on what Dr. Woon has said, and also by referring to also Professor Danny Wong. I think it's a very good presentation, and especially Dr. Woon has give us a quite great and precise deliberation on the nationalism among the Malay, Bidayuh, and Chinese in Bau, especially in Bau area. I think that is very relevant because other races were not included in the speech because historically background had informed us that these three are the major group in Bau area. Of course, Bidayuh until today is still forming about 68% of the total Bau population, and Chinese about 20, and Malay. So the rest of other ethnic groups are very small in number. So I think the nationalism, as what Prof. Danny has said, is that of course it's a consciousness of belonging to a group, but of course that also involves the identity of the people of the group. So of course, if we want to understand it more clearly on what are the identity that they are creating, that we have to go deeper into the culture or the language, religious belief, or social organization, and even the living style, and also the political power, in order to know that the affiliation or the association to form the identity. So of course, for all these three groups, especially say for the Bidayuh identity is of course, though they have different languages or dialects, however they're still able to understand each other, and the rest of the other elements, the variables like the social organization, religious belief, language, except language, so they're still quite close to one another. So for consciousness of belonging, that will not create any difficulty among the Bidayuh group. Now, among the Malay, of course, they are a bit more easy to be referred to, as they are common to other Malay in other district or division. And for the Chinese, of course, definitely, I think, because they are linked by a more traditional kind of kinship and all that, so it's also easier for them to be grouped under one. See, so of course, as Prof. Dennis has suggested, so Dr. Boon's introductory kind of statement, the same nationalism in Bao, that to me it is quite earlier starting, because especially among the Chinese, and Liu Sanpang was supposed to be labeled. He has been labeled as one of the earlier Chinese hero, to again came up to against colonialism. So that was written by a historian. So he was the first one in the world to be a hero against the colonial master. So of course, my suggestion is that I agree with what Prof. Daniel has said, that we should further develop study or research on this area to get a better insight and understanding of the nationalism in Bau, especially because Bau is one of the earlier settlement of the Chinese who migrated from Kalimantan. So, and Bidayu was even much more earlier, who came in at least more than 400 years, I think. Because some historians have said they came, Bidayu came earlier than the Iban and the Malay. Okay, so for the Iban, they have record to say that up to now there are 16 generation. 16 generation. Now is almost 400 over years. One generation is 25 years. Okay, so if Bidayu came in to Sarawak earlier than the Iban, that means they came here at least 500 years or more. Okay, so I think it's worth to initiate a further study into the nationalism of the Bidayu and the Malay in Bau, because for the Chinese, I think there are a lot of records by the historian saying that since 1820 that the Chinese had been settled in Bau. So I think, of course, we can pick up some of this and then do some study on nationalism. Okay, that's my observation. Thank you very much, Dr. John.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lam. Yeah. Okay. We have another question coming. This is from Xperia X72. The question is, a few years back, I read from Borneo Post newspaper headlines, Bidayu identities are declining. So related to our seminar tonight, from what I see, the Bidayu nationalists such as Kaga and Kago, Pak Rimban, are not well known to younger generation and even to Bidayu community itself. They don't know their own nationalists. So my question is there any plan, idea, and effort by our government or any NGO to promote Bidayu nationalists to be more, prominent, like we know, such as Rantap, Sharif Masaho, Patinggi Ali, Rosli Dobi, and Liu Shanbang. Okay, so I forward this question to Dr. Voon. Dr. Voon?
Okay,
all right.
Thank you. I think this is one of the best questions and that challenge me all the time. Normally when we do research, Dr. John, there is a feeling of not just sympathy, we feel part of them. So when I was going around Bau, I find that the Bau people are first, as reported in the history, is very conservative. They tend not to brag or whatever, They are very, very nice people. But then again, I also at the same time found out that, like Dr. John yourself, we are all, you are very outspoken and very intelligent. Many of you are become friends over my research now. Yeah. So this is my learning experience. Bau it was called Upper Sarawak. before that, you have only Kuching, yeah. But Upper Sarawak, that's why it's called Sarawak. Old Sarawak only a small place, and actually that is where Bau becomes so significant in the nation building, or you can say community building. When they first came, the Bau people already has to be totally self-reliant. So then, because of that, there were so many challenges, including malaria, for example. They don't have enough food. They have to face natural calamities. All sorts of challenges. And also, on top of that, they were challenged by outsiders. Outsiders like the Ibans, marauders from Skrang and so on. So these are the backdrop of Bau people, Bau Bitayu. Yeah, of course, when the Malay actually was at the ages of Bau. Yeah, but they were part of the Bau. So Bitayu was the main player in terms of nation building, or you can say community building in Bau. Yeah, so that's what my the background. But one important thing that I came across is that when Blue came in, Blue they did a few good things. Okay, one of the good things is the headhunting. He abolished headhunting. He also abolished slavery, which was very prevalent. In Bau those days. We should take it in a positive sense, because they were defending themselves. Like headhunting, they were defending themselves. They actually kept the enemy scouts, enemy heads, and respected them. And then also there is a slavery there. They were treated as slaves by outsiders, And they were very hardworking Bidayus in Bau, and they were taxed, heavily taxed. That's where the problem came. The Brunei regime those days taxed them, so very heavily taxed. So Mita was one of them against. Pak Rimban was against them in terms of taxation, in terms of head tax and so on. So I just zero in now to let the viewer know about this Pak Rimban. Pak Rimban was 1841. He was executed by James Blue through a group of Brunei. Those days you have Datuk, you have the Imam and so on. They were sitting together. They decided to executed him. So why? The question is why? Pak Rimban was from Singai. He was actually is the paramount chief. He was elected by all the chiefs there. There were a few villages in Singai. So at that time, Pak Rimban was very interesting. Pak Rimban was very democratic. So then, as I said just now, there were tax, the rice tax. So this group of people from Kuching, they were actually called Kliang. Okay, Kliang actually is a Malay. All right, Malay. They used to call Malay. Even now they call the Malay Kliang. So the Kliang went in and went to the mountain at Singai there and taxed them, of course, regularly. But at one time they were cheated. So the elders of Singai came together and appealed to talk to Pak Rimban, who is the paramount chief that time, for Kampong Atas, Kupua Atas. So when this happened, what happened is that the Kliang play trick on them, overtaxed them, and then finally the paramount chief Pak Rimban and other elders decide to fight back. Okay, so how do they fight back? They actually challenged the Kliang, who came in to tax them and treated them like enemies. So actually, this is the first instance of the really, you can say, armed struggle against oppressors or outside. See, Kliang is from Kuching, all right? So at the end, what happened is this, the second time they came, actually there was battle already between Pak Rimban and his group of people, and also the other group from Kuching. At the end, of course, the Kliang was defeated. So there was this Kliang Valley now in Singai. is full of the bodies, full of bodies of Kliang. Kliang is another word for Malay. Yeah? So these are the people who came to attack. So at the end, Pak Rimban was very famous for fighting for the rights of the elders who felt that they were totally oppressed. So there were instances, there were evidences, there were story about how it happened, which I hope to write it. Yeah. So this Pak Rimban now in the picture, he was actually, this one is not him lah. This one is one of his descendants. If this man is still alive, he's about 100 plus. So he was Pak Rimban. Actually, look at Pak Rimban. Rimban is the daughter's name. So Pak Rimban's daughter's name. Pak Rimban is that man who fought against and was executed. Then the story of James Brooke came in 1841 exactly, just before he became Raja or Raja Puteh. He came in, so at the end, Pak Rimban has to give in because he had, of course, you know, James Brooke has gunpowder. You know, they can burn down the villages. So at the end, they had a deal, and then two of them, including Pak Rimban and the other fellow who went down and arrested by James Brooke's groups. Okay, so in Kuching they have a open trial, but then James Brooke made this remark in one of the documents. He said he is reluctant or hesitate to execute Pak Rimban. Okay, actually James Brooke hesitate to execute or kill Pak Rimban and his right-hand man, these two men, because he found that he is okay. He's not much problem. But according to Undang-Undang or Undang-Undang Brunei, that was the, you know, the juries, so-called juries in James Brooke time, just before he became Raja Brooke, decided to say that Pak Rimban was wrong because he has killed a lot of Kliang. But actually, you can see that the Kliang is the one who attacked them. They defend themselves. They will feel cheated. They defend themselves. So the war. So you can see Pak Rimban actually was very well respected in the kampong. As I started just now, I said that many people, Bidayu are very conservative. But I can tell you, when I went down to the kampong, a lot of them who know about the story really respect this guy, Pak Rimban. All right? So this is where it is. But after James Brooke becomes head, you know, of course, Pak Rimban was martyred, was killed, was executed. Then people start forgetting it, because it's not politically correct. There's a term called politically correct. Now, if you speak against James Brooke, later on, nobody will be on your side. It's such a correct political correctness. So Pak Rimban, actually now, you can go to kampong, you ask those who know, they really respect him. He is feared. And the book by Noah Dennison, Noah Dennison is one who recorded it in 1841 when he went down there. 1874, he went down and he always hear people talking about Pak Rimban. This Pak Rimban is respected not just in Singai, also respected by the Sikong people. Sikong is the place where they originated from, Dutch Borneo there. So actually people compare Pak Rimban with Rentak of Jadok or Sadok. Yeah. So these two figures, if you imagine Rentak, everybody know about Rentak of Iban from Skrang, who was now considered a freedom fighter. But the book written by Dennison and other people, they were talking Pak Rimban alongside Rentak. All right. So that's how Pak Rimban was. Of course, he was dead. He was executed. He saved his Singai people, and there was no more mistreatment or over-taxation or any trickery done by the Kliang or other people from Kuching. When James Brooke took over, everything is smooth and peaceful, and there was no more battles. Everything is according to the adat or the customs of the Bidayu in Singai. Okay, the same story goes to Mita, but Mita is of less significant. Okay, Mita, and of course you have this guy, Kaga and Kado and Kulo. These people, they are pioneers. They were fighting against different people, especially marauders or raiders coming from elsewhere to protect their own people, their land. So I just want to give you a picture. Is like what Dr. Lam has said. We can go down further and learn more. Learn more about them. I have just completed with Pak Rimbang. There are a lot more. Even Pak Rimban itself, there's so many. You can look at his father, Pak Rimban's daughter, and son-in-law. All that they were fighting for their own people, the freedom of their people, Singai. So this is what I can tell you, my friend. Yeah, bau nationalism or bau community spirit is diminishing, correct? But it has got to come back again. There's no other way, because these people has done so much to the community, and they cannot be just buried in the histories. I hope one day we can work together and find out more, and then publish books and let the young people know about it. Thank you. Long story. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Voon. That was, a very comprehensive, explanation, on your part with regard to the nationalist, Pak Rimban, especially. I think he took up much of your explanation there. Yeah. Okay. If there are any comments or questions from members of the floor, please put them up on the chat. Yeah. So far, there's not been many questions tonight. Yeah. There are only 7 of us, I think. So maybe Prof. Datuk Danny Wong would like to give some comments, maybe.
Thank you, Dr. John. We met, I think we have not met. Hopefully in future we'll be able to meet. I think what Dr. Woon has said is very true. And also the question raised with regards to the consciousness of the young people are now maybe not as strong as before and so on. I think this is where the community will probably have to do a bit more by educating, by having some programs that can actually continue to emphasize, reinforce the idea of the early history of Bao. A lot of things were not found in our textbooks, school textbooks. That is inevitable because of the amount of information that is available for each locality is just amazing. So the best is actually important for us to dwell on it, develop it, and then share this information with the rest of the community. In today's world, there are many modes of ways that we can actually share all this information, especially through social media, through the broadcast. A lot of organizations such as the Bidayuh Dayak National Association can actually look into this area and then see how they can actually develop certain videos or talks or podcasts and then put it on the web, put it in through various ways so that the younger people could actually understand. So this is something that I thought a lot of community, not just the Bidayuh, but even the Chinese are also facing such challenges. And I think some of them are already taking steps to actually develop something or do something about this. So maybe that I should stop here and then let others to have a chance to contribute. Thank you, Dr. John.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Datuk Danny Wong. Yes, any questions for Dr. Voon and Professor Datuk Danny Wong?
I'm okay. Thank you so much. I have no question, no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Seems that we are waiting for questions. Maybe Elena, you may have some questions to ask yourself. Our MC, Elena?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. You may want to ask some question yourself.
One of my students was asking,
Mhm.
why do you say that Bau is the birthplace of nationalism?
That's a good
Maybe
question.
one of those speakers, or even Dr. Danny can answer for us, or Dr. Voon can answer this question. Because we have Rentap, we have other people, but why do you say that Bau is particularly is a birthplace for nationalism in Sarawak? Yeah.
I think that's a loaded question, yeah, and a pertinent one, yeah. Professor Datuk Danny Wong, you may like to take up the question, or Dr. Voon, either one of you.
Let me just mention this. I for one will not say that Bau is the first place of nationalism, as I explained earlier. But then I would say that this is one of the earliest places where we can see how different people develop their sense of community, sense of belonging, and also sense of idea coming together as one people. And I think this is something that that has continued to build on. And then when the Brooks came, they were reacting as a community, as a tribe, and so on. So this may be that the consciousness have started there. So yeah, if you want to push and stretch a bit on saying that this is the first place of nationalism and so on, maybe this is where the cradle of the consciousness that will eventually lead to nationalism. Maybe we can actually put it in this manner. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Danny, for your clarification, yeah, on whether or not Bau is the birthplace of nationalism. Yeah, I find your explanation on that very interesting. Yeah. So, any other questions?
John?
Yes, Dr. Voon, yes.
Let's quickly respond just now. Okay, if we are familiar with Sarawak, the history of Sarawak, the old history, we're not talking about beyond Sadong or beyond Samarahan, yeah, or those days. Bau is called Upper Sarawak, and is going down to Peninsula, Samarahan, and a bit towards the Kuching. That's all Sarawak, yeah. When 1841, yeah, and so the only political actors were the Brunei, right? Brunei and the local Malays. Okay, they were already there. That's Patinggi Ali. So when I think of this nationalism, why I incline again to say that it is one of the first, if not the first place, in Sarawak, because of the place, the jurisdiction, okay, of under Sarawak. Of course, there are a lot of Bitayu in Peninsula area, okay, even Lunduk area. Yes, these people, they do not have the history of fighting against Brunei, okay, not that I know at all. Yeah, they were very peaceful. They came from Sikong, they crossed over, they stayed there. And some of them will move to Bau. Okay, it is from Bau, like Singai, Serembu, Mita was, Parimban, and of course, Brata area. Okay, the way were freedom fighting. Okay, so when I talk about nationalism, we're talking about freedom fighting. I'm not talking about how a community is built. A lot of kampongs in Peninsula, in Syrian side, but there was no history of against the Iban, against Brunei, and so on. They came from West Kalimantan. That's about all they settled there. But in Bau, there is freedom fighting. Okay, so they fought against James Brooke. They fought against the Brunei regime. They fought against the Kliang from the city. Okay, the Malay Sultanate. Actually they were Brunei rules. Okay, so they have their own culture, their own way of life. Elders in the kampong. So actually, their culture was intimidated. And then their way of life, they were treated like slaves. They were oppressed. They were taxed. They were, they came and then they demand this and demand that from the people. At the same time, to what extent they give protection to Bidayuh people in Bau is another story. Actually, they hardly give any protection to the Bidayuh. That's why they were raided by the Ibans and by the raiders, from Skran, and also Sibuyao there were people coming in to Musi. So these are the oppression and hardship and ill treatment by the Brunei regime as well as by the outsiders. So at the end, colonial days as well, under the blokes, but to a lesser extent. So that's why I incline to say that Bau is the only place where you can see nationalism or freedom fighting going on in that sense. I mean, again, I want to stress the jurisdiction. Yeah, I'm not talking about beyond. Beyond that, if you can tell me there is some fighting and so on, that's another story. But I'm talking about the Sarawak, yeah, old Sarawak, and Bau is called Upper Sarawak. That jurisdiction. That's why I try to say that the first freedom fighting or first nationalistic movement, or you can find first nationalist, maybe a few more first nationalists are a word from Bau. Okay, that's my argument. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Voon. Yeah. Any other questions? Anyone would like to forward their questions? We still have time. All right. Probably, Dr. Voon, I would like to say a bit here. Yeah, I find this topic very interesting. Yeah, nationalism in Bau. Yeah, in the context of the three main communities. Yeah, since 1820. I see your point here, Dr. Voon. Yeah, that at that time, yeah, when Brooke arrived, or James Brooke arrived in Sarawak, there was already this activity which you term freedom fighting, yeah, in Bau, yeah, and in fact, when you talk about the Bidayuh, in the case of Pak Riban and Pak Pulau, Panglima Pulau, yeah, the Bidayuh actually, if you read, books written by colonial writers, they were actually among the worst oppressed people or worst oppressed natives in Sarawak, yeah, even before the times of the Brooke, yeah, and of course the main culprit was the Brunei Sultanate, yeah, they were always oppressing the natives, especially the Land Dayaks. Not much of the Iban, because the Ibans were actually able to fend for themselves, being a martial, people. Yeah, the Ibans, they are very well known for their, skill in war, and they would not bow to any power, not even the Brunei Sultanate. So the Brunei Sultanate, they would rather avoid the Ibans or the Kayans, yeah, because these are very strong communities, and they were very well known for headhunting and raiding and all that, but not the Bidayu, because the Bidayu, basically, they are peace-loving people. They were very peace-loving people. They were not a martial community, yeah, and there was no such thing as Bidayu in those days, because Land Dayaks were composed of several, different groups based on, dialectal differences, yeah, and each Bidayu community, I believe, at that time, even before the time of Brooks, look at each other, as a totally different group of people, even though they may be, related in terms of culture or dialects or language. Yeah, but they see each other as totally different people, different entities. The people of Singai, they see the Land Dayaks of Surian then as foreigners, as not being their kinsmen. So do the people from Penrisen. They see the Bijagoy or the Bidayu people probably as enemies in those days. Yeah, there is such a thing as headhunting between the Land Dayak groups themselves. Yeah, people from Singai would go, and foray, into territories of, let's say, the Penrisen or Padawan Bidayus, and take heads and come back again. And those people from Padawan Penrisen, they take revenge and go into the territories of the Singai people and take heads. So this is very common in those days, and also among the Ibans. It is not uncommon for an Iban from, let's say, Saribas to go on raids or war path to another Iban area, let's say in Unduk Sriaman or in Batang Ai, in Lubu Antu, to conduct raids and headhunting among the fellow Ibans. So I think, my thought on this is that nationalism probably was at its early stage at the time. There were already events which precede what we would term as nationalism, in the form of what Dr. Voon said, freedom fighting. Yes, and basically those days, in the case of the Bidayu in Bau, the Chinese in Bau, and the Malay under Patinggi Ali, they were actually fighting for freedom and justice, from an oppressive master. And in this case, of course, is the Brunei Sultanate. They were all too well known for being oppressive, rulers and masters, especially on the Land Dayaks in those days. Yeah, much less among the Ibans, because the Ibans were a very independent group, and they were a very strong native group. And the oftentimes the Brunei sultans and agents would make use of the Ibans to go on raids and raid other, weaker Dayak groups. And then this is well documented in history, actually. Yeah, so I see what Pak Rimban is doing, for example, in Bau or Liu Shanpang or Wan Jia, as you refer to, as, freedom fighting, like what you said, because they felt the need to break away from the yoke of the Brunei Sultanate, who were overtaxing them, and causing a lot of hardship, especially among the Bidayus. But Pak Rimban was, I think, the only Bidayu leader who took up arms against the Brunei Sultanate. And in this case, of course, James Brooke, because in 1841 he was already given the governorship of Sarawak. So in order to please his political masters, the Brunei Sultanate, he had to do something, as much as he claimed in his diary that he did not want Pak Rimban and the other warrior, Pak Tumo, to be executed. It was much against his wish, but because he had to please the Brunei master who gave him the governorship of Sarawak, he had to just stay away from the whole thing and just probably look at the two Bidayuh chiefs being executed at the Astana, behind the Astana. So yeah, I think that happened also to other natives, for example, Rentap, and some leaders even before Rentap who actually waged war against James Brooke when Brooke first established his kingdom in Sarawak. It's all about fighting for freedom and justice, and to break the yoke of the Brunei Sultanate or James Brooke, whom they see. I mean, in the case of Rentap, he saw Brooke as a foreigner who is basically intruding into the Iban way of life, taxing the Ibans. The Ibans know nothing about taxation. So to them, taxing them is something strange, something that causes trouble to them. And that's why Rentap went against them. So in the case of the Bidayuh, Pak Rimban, that is what happened actually. They were overtaxed by the Brunei agents, or those, Kiriangs, like what Dr. Voon referred to, who went up to Mount Sinai and overtaxed them and cheated them in unfair trading. A lot of these cases have been documented in the history books. Unfair trading, they use a certain method where they cheated the natives, and natives found out that they were cheated, and that's how the whole thing began for Pak Rimban, because they couldn't take it anymore, right? So they started, killing those people, those agents, when they go up and demand rice, demand all sorts of things, and even children and women sometimes were being, taken away if the families cannot provide the Brunei agents with rice and all that. Yes. So I think this is a very interesting discussion, and it may not be like what Professor Danny Wong commented early on, that nationalism in this case may not be the pure nationalism as we see it in a modern sense, where people actually they fight for freedom and justice, which is associated with cultural revivals, because of anything else. But basically, people are fighting for their own cultural pride. Yeah, in the case of this nationalists that we talked about. Yeah, it may not be related to something bigger, which is formation of a state or statehood. Yeah, probably those people didn't have an understanding or any notion of statehood in those times. But basically it was from the perspective of freedom fighting, breaking away from the yoke of injustice and oppression. Yeah, I think this is the only thing I would like to contribute here, because this is a topic which is quite close to my heart actually. Yeah. So thank you for bearing with me. All right. If there are any questions, please. There are 8 of us. Dr. Voon, you may like to comment on what I said earlier on.
Oh yes, Dr. John. Yes, thank you for your first-hand contribution. Each of us should recognize Dr. John is from Sinai, and he knows the sentiment there more than anyone of much more than I do. I only can appreciate more as you share. Quite similar. Yeah, it is whole thing, the oppression that caused the whole Bau. You know, Pak Rimban was very successful man, okay? And then the other thing is that because he was so influential, so good, was so good that he actually wants to extend protection to Bratak, you know, to Kulo side there. So that's what the Kliang or the Brunei agents were afraid. It was documented that actually they were worried that Pak Rimban becomes too influential and becomes the head for all the sentiments of Bau. You know, that to that extent, Pak Rimban has actually Pak Rimban also has helped Pak Tinggi Ali, and actually Pak Rimban also has helped James Brooke in 1839 to fight against this Makota. If you know, remember the story Makota. So Pak Rimban is a incredible with Pak Tumor, incredible man, and then I see him as a nationalist because there is no other better term for it. You can call him patriot, you can call him some other thing, but in those days, Sinai itself was like a nation. Okay, they were independent, they shield from each other, they have their own kampong forts and so on. And the same goes to went to this Brata, Serembu. Each of them have their own nations, okay, in a way their own mountaintop community, I call it, the Bung culture. So they have their own politics as well. You see, I know them because the elders, they have the borough, they have their own politics, their own culture, political culture. So is something that I can appreciate. Thank you, John, for sharing your wonderful thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Voon. Yeah, we may have some questions after this. So far, we've only had one question from the members of the floor. Yeah, we are still waiting. Any question from probably Elizabeth? I see you've just got into the the forum. You may like.
Yeah. So sorry, I forgot about the online seminar. That's why I just enter. So I have no questions because I did not hear anything earlier on.
All right. Well, you still have time to formulate a question. Yeah. It's just check on time. It's 9:43. What time are we supposed to end the program, Dr. Voon, Elena?
I think it depends on the questions, if we have any. If we don't have, Dr. Voon, what do you think?
Yeah, we get close if there is no question. Yeah, or we can now is a bit late already. We have discussion among ourselves, which is equally important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great learning session for everyone, actually.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It has been. Yeah. Maybe I have a question, Dr. Voon.
Okay.
Okay, just out of curiosity, yeah, the early Chinese who came to Bao at that time, all right, as I understood it, they were mainly traders and miners, right, in the gold mine and antimony mines. So some of the Bidayuks, they were also involved in the antimony mines, in those days. Working with the Chinese and the Malays, probably not much of the Malays, but they were the Brunei Sultanate at that time were actually just like their counterparts in Kalimantan, the sultanates there, they actually own those mines. If I am not mistaken from my reading, they own those mines, and they invited the Chinese to come over and work those mines. Yeah, but my question really is, were the Chinese in Bao at the time or spill-offs from the Lanfang Republic, in Pontianak, or were they Chinese from other parts, because I understood that the Lanfang Republic was the first democratic republic in the world at that time. They were established in 1777, much before the USA. Yeah, I find that a very interesting fact. Yeah, for the Chinese who came to Kalimantan, to Borneo at that time, they were already establishing the first democratic republic in the world under Luo Fangbo, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. All right. Yes. So that's my question, Dr. Voon. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to put it very short here. In the 18th century, like what you mentioned, 1777, this Lo Fang Pe or Lang Fang Republic was established. That was historically well documented by Dutch scholar. Yeah. Yes. They already went there in the West Kalimantan. They actually actively involved in all sorts of mining, especially gold, right? And so the claim that the first republic, they said first republic in the world, was not an exaggeration. They actually started one there. But I wouldn't be surprised that they actually model after somewhere in their village way back in China, mainland China. It's not a novel idea, I would say, but then it was a first republic exercise outside China, you see. So that was my understanding. But in China, I wouldn't be surprised there were village people having election and choose their president, etc. But then when they came here, Lo Fang Pe, there's this man, he's established as one, recognized by the Dutch, Malays, and Chinese. There's one thing that you mentioned about mining. I have seen records from the Dutch sources that already Dayak, in other words, land Dayak, which is now they call Bidayu. The land Dayak swap in West Kalimantan already gold mining area. It's only Chinese, Dutch sources. So in other words, when the Bidayu know this know-how of gold mining, it's not something that is of shock to us. They actually know what to do. It's just that they didn't go and do it because that time gold to them has little value. They are accustomed to the jungle mountaintop life, all right? And then of course the technology like rice cultivation, it was done in Bau. So you can see the technology, the knowledge of Bidayu or land Dayak in Bau. Yeah. So that was some of the thing. But then when you talk about antimony was more to the Malay in the 1830s, okay, 1830s, all right? That's where actually Brunei, via this Mahkota, Mahkota was actually a villain, all right? He was the one who actually went against the local Malays in Lidatana, in the Batu Kitang area there. So actually this conflict actually led to Muda Hashim coming over, James Brooke coming over, because there was civil war between Mahkota and Datuk Patingga Ali. All right. So Bating Lee was very early nationalist, fighting against Mahkota actually. But later he also fought against Muda Hashim. He also fought against James Blue. So you can see Datuk Pating Ali was actually a true freedom fighter, was a nationalist. He stood up, stood up, and actually he was related to Sambas Malays also. This is factual. So actually he went back to seek help from the Sambas Malays, but they didn't come. The help didn't come. So Pating Ali and the local Malays were actually fighting their own war. And they were very strong. They actually won. After they have a deal with James Blue, then they start to follow. And then James Blue also recognized Pating Ali. So that Pating Ali becomes one of his James Blue right-hand man. Even go for expedition, war path to other areas outside of Sarawak. Just also remember the jurisdiction or the boundary of Old Sarawak is very small. We cannot imagine what today it is. Even the other Charles Brook, then there was expansion. It was very small. The Bau was actually you can see the fertile land for this freedom fighting. This because partly they were mining gold. So 1820s, you can see already the people coming all over, from the Tringu side, from Gombang side, they cross over, not really through this part of the world, not through Singai or through Serembu. So you can see the movement is different from different eras. But important thingly is that it was gold already not well documented. There was some geographers that I know of, like James Jackson. He did mention 1820s, but then you can see also when the antimony mining is done, and also the quicksilver, the mercury was done at Tagora and BD, etc. Those are well documented. Yeah. So you can see Bau itself, because partly you can see the place is well shielded, more it's a haven, is safe. Was a lot of interest in it from the foreigners, from the Brunei, from the foreigners like the Westerners, as well as from other tribes like Iban, from Saribas, from Skrang, those are area, and coastal area as well. You see some people came from Bluntu and tried to go down to Bau. So to answer you, I hope this gives you a better picture of the thing, John. John. So
yeah. Good. Thank you so much, Dr. Voon, for your
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah.
All right. I think a lot of the discourse revolve around the speaker, Professor Datuk Danny, and myself. Yeah.
It's okay.
But we're having fun, aren't we?
I enjoyed it very much.
I think
Thank you
that's
so
more
much.
important. All right. So
Yes,
we still await questions from members of the floor. Any question? All right. Related to nationalism in Bau. I see Xperia, I see Galaxy, I see Elizabeth Nayong, right there. Unfortunately tonight we we don't get to see the guest of honor, Datuk Henry himself. He must be very busy tonight. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's just us tonight. But I think a lot of discussions have been generated. Yeah, and that's something good that is happening tonight, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Professor Danny, anything to sort of encapsulate our discussion for tonight?
I think, thank you, Dr. John. I think the idea that has been put forward a lot, and I think Dr. Woon has been amazing in handling all these details about the localities of Bau. And I noticed that his knowledge of the Bidayu communities have been especially strengthened and became more in-depth. And I think this will be very useful for history of the Bidayu to be written later. And this is something that I thought very good. And I hope, that this kind of discussion will continue, that the Sejati Institute will continue to foster, to encourage this kind of discussion. Of course, it will be good if we can have more people, but nonetheless, even though 2 or 3 gather together, it is still a force to be reckoned with, especially with the good questions and also with the ideas that were exchanged just now. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah, thank you, Dr. John.
Thank you, Prof. Danny.
Prof.
Nice to have you in this session.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Elena, Dr. Voon,
Yeah.
should we conclude this, or should we wait for? I don't think we are getting any more
All right.
questions. The way things seem to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've said my piece too. Yeah.
Okay, if it's but just to let you know that I think tonight is a very informative what do you call this talk. I personally enjoy myself listening to all of you, and even though I'm not a historian like you guys, I am more into language, but I find that this is a baby step to, you know, encouraging all the young ones to come out and talk more about this stuff. You guys are just how would I say beginners, pioneers in this kind of event. Then we're gonna have young people coming out to talk more about this. It'll be good. It'll be good to involve a lot of young people, especially the young graduates. I think the world needs to know more about Bidayu and the Bau. Okay. Anyway, let's before we say a close for the night. I think Nick wants to take a group photo. Is it Nick?
Yes, yes, Elena.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Can everyone turn on your camera, please? Okay. Okay. I will take your photo in 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. Pass to the MC.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. Anything else? Any last words from Dr. Voon?
Yeah, okay, thank you. First, this is the last of the 4 talks. I want to thank Dr. Henry. That's a quick one for agreeing to the topics and so etc. He has his heart all for Bau, so I am able to contribute a little bit. I feel so blessed in a way. And I want to thank the top Professor Danny. Thank you so much. I know you're a very busy person, and your comments are always in my heart, and I will take note of that. I will learn out of it and grow out of it as well. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
And
Thank
also,
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you,
look
Dr.
forward
Voon.
to
Thank you, Prof.
thank
Danny,
you so much.
Elena.
Thank you,
Yeah.
MC. Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Everybody, good night. Thank you
I
very
hope
much.
to see you guys again.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, good night. Thank you so much.
All right. Good night. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Yeah.